Baby, here I go, start the show. Beat on my heart, now about to explode. I'm about to explode. Feel good, what I'm feeling.
Good evening. Happy Friday Eve, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Ignite Your True Self. I am Ericka Sallee, your host for tonight's show, and I'm super excited. Got a lot of good stuff to share with you tonight. And I'll get to that in just a moment. So I do want to take this opportunity to welcome you to the conversation. If you happen to be here for the first time, let me give you a special welcome and then take a moment to introduce myself. For those of you who may not know, yes, I'm Ericka Sallee, speaker, self-help author, transformation success coach, and owner of True Synergy. And as a result of my personal coaching programs and professional development workshops, I do help my clients, women, and organizations to figure out what stands in the way of their success. And the best part is that I then get to share strategies to help my clients to move beyond those barriers and to move forward into their true self, their true synergy, their best version. I use those three words interchangeably because it simply means that you are living purposefully and fulfilled, and you're really doing it on a number of different levels, personally and professionally. And so this show, Ignite Your True Self, is all about sharing some time and some space to do just that, to be able to call out some things that you may be dealing with in your space right now that may actually be a barrier to you getting to whatever next is. And I always love to remind myself and to remind you that getting to your next best version isn't about the complete picture. It is about getting to the next step in that picture. And sometimes when we talk about transformation, we talk about change, we get tripped up sometimes because we're thinking about the big thing, the big picture, which we should keep in mind. But sometimes when we think about it from just the big perspective, we get stifled and we don't think about those little steps along the way that can get us to the big picture. Hence, the conversation in these shows, Ignite Your True Self. And so it is my hope to just give you a little bit of a spark that will allow you to walk away from this conversation and say, oh, that's the next thing that I need to keep me moving forward. So I wanted to just be clear on just a little bit of background. And for those of you who are coming back to the show this week, you are return viewers, then I want to welcome you as well and say thank you to you for coming back. And hopefully you've invited a friend or two to be a part of the conversation. So before we get started, I do want to acknowledge the fact that, yes, it is indeed Pride Month. And so I want to say happy Pride Month to those who are sharing in the LGBTQI plus community, and hoping that this month's celebration is not just an opportunity to bring awareness to the joy and the self-expression and really living in your truth that you are experiencing now, but that it will carry throughout the rest of the months from this year on, and that you have the allies to help you to advance really your message, your way of life, your right to live that life, and that there are advocates who can help support you in that effort. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that. And then I also want to remind you that if you are watching and you hear something that resonates with you and you decide that you want to post something on your social media sites, I do want you to use the hashtag Ignite Your True Self. Let your community know where you're hanging out tonight and that's something that resonates with you, because if there's something that is important to you or you get an aha moment, it might just be the thing that somebody else needs to hear. And so if you hashtag that out, then of course they know where that came from, and then you can also be an inspiration to them as well. So do hashtag Ignite Your True Self. So before I get into the topic for tonight, I do want to just acknowledge the fact that I put out a question earlier on my Facebook page, on Facebook Live. And I didn't put it on all the social media sites. I just wanted to kind of test this out a little bit. But I put out a challenge. And I said, I have this catalog of topics that I have listed out to share throughout the year. And so I decided to put a question out to ask viewers what topic they would be interested in hearing tonight. So I gave them 3 options. The first option was, are you sabotaging yourself? The second option was, what not knowing your purpose is costing you. And then the third option was what you're not allowing to enter your life. And so I gave it some time. And so after putting it out there and then coming back to look at results, then I want to share what the suggested topic for tonight actually is. And it is, are you sabotaging yourself? Are you sabotaging yourself? Now, I've got a lot of things to share with you in this topic, and there's so many different layers to this. So I really want to try to get through these as quickly as I can. It's almost going to be like a fire hose conversation where I'm just going to be pouring information. So if you're in a position where you can take notes, then I do encourage you to get a pen and a piece of paper or a pencil, of course, and take notes if you can. If you happen to be driving and you're watching this, then you just listen, and you can always come back, check out the replay, and then you can take notes accordingly. So before I actually get into the topic, are you sabotaging yourself? I do want to just kind of define what when I say sabotage, what do we actually mean? And so, of course, I went to Merriam-Webster.com. I say this every time I say it, and every time I actually go to the website to look up a word, I just think back to my childhood, when I used to use the dictionary, like the big, thick dictionary. And we're so past that. I mean, we still do. Do people still even print dictionaries? Well, okay. Anyway, I went to Merriam-Webster.com because I wanted to look up the definition, and I wanted to speak the definition so that as we're talking about this, we can really think about what it means. Okay. So according to Merriam-Webster, here is what sabotage actually means. It is an act or process tending to hamper or hurt. So let me just say that again. It is an act or process tending to hamper or hurt. Okay. So as we go through this topic tonight, I want you to think about exactly what the topic says. Are you sabotaging yourself? So I'm going to substitute the definition and say, are you tending to hamper or hurt yourself? Are you hampering something in your space, something that could potentially be an opportunity? Are you hindering yourself? Are you hampering yourself from being able to? And then we can fill in the blanks. And I think it'll become clearer as I start to open up some of these next questions that are going to feed into tonight's conversation. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get into this topic by asking a series of questions. Okay. And as I ask these series of questions, I want you to take a moment to sit with where you are right now. There's a process that I use with my clients. It's called the IRP method to transformation. And the I is for introspection, where we get a chance to just kind of think about where we are right now in this time and space. And so these series of questions that I'm getting ready to ask you is part of how I perform that introspection part of a coaching arrangement, or an arrangement with a client. So here's what I'm going to start doing. I want to start asking you some questions. I'm going to ask you 7 specific questions. And when I ask these questions, I want you to just kind of go in, look at the landscape of what's happening right now, and just see how you answer these questions. Okay. So here's the first question. And actually, I meant to take this out, but I'm going to leave it in. So here's the first question. Are you putting yourself down? Okay. Now I have verbally here in parentheses because sometimes we tend to put ourselves down and we speak it out loud. Okay. We speak it out loud. Here's how it might sound: I'm so stupid. I'm not smart enough. And you know how it is. Like sometimes when things happen, you say to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did that. And I know it probably sounds like, but I just said this little thing. But at the end of the day, a lot of times when we say it one time, we're probably saying it more than that one time. So that repeated, I'm so stupid, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not attractive enough, or I'm not as pretty as somebody else, right? Does that sound familiar? Are you putting yourself down and actually speaking it out of your mouth? Now, let me tell you, if you've ever been working with me, if you've seen anything that I've posted, you know that I have a thing with words. I have a thing about how we say things. So this first one is one that's near and dear to my heart because I do believe that words have power and we have the ability to speak life with what we say, or we have the ability to speak death by what we say. Now, I don't mean physical death, I mean literal death. And that's probably a conversation that needs to go a lot further than tonight. But we got a lot of material to cover tonight in a short span of time. So I want to keep moving forward. There she is. Happy Friday Eve. Good to see you on with me, Alabama Powell, but I know your real name. But I'm glad that you are here with me live. So you say sometimes. Okay. So are you sometimes is okay. All right. So stay with me. So here's the second question I have for you. Are you thinking toxic thoughts? Now, the putting yourself down verbally, anything verbal and thoughts kind of go together. Okay. So I have a tendency to say, not only is it what we say, but what we think is also a part of that, because out of our mouth often comes what we are thinking in our minds. And so are you thinking toxic thoughts? And you might say, well, what is a toxic thought? It is, okay, this is the way that it's always been. This is the way that it's always got to be. And sometimes those thoughts, as I said, do come out of your mouth. Sometimes you just kind of like, okay, I'm thinking it, but I don't say it. Okay. So it could be either way. You're thinking it and you say it, or you're thinking it and you just don't say it, but it's still sitting right here. So are you thinking a toxic thought like, oh, it'll never happen for me? Or, why am I even thinking about this in the first place? Because I just know it's no way, right? Is that you? Here's another question. Are you having trouble saying no? I don't know if you realize it, but no is actually a complete sentence. Are you having trouble saying no? Is it that someone, and I've talked about this in other episodes, I've talked about it in other conversations, but I do believe that we are in a time where these types of things need to be repeated, because now is the opportunity where we can decide to make some shifts. Okay. Are you having trouble saying no? Is it that someone can always depend on you? If, oh God, if I say no, then what are they going to think about me? Or if I say no, are they going to like me? If I say no, are they going to think, oh, well, she just doesn't care? Is that you? The next question is, are you allowing yourself to be manipulated by other people? I'm just going to let that one sit right there for a minute. Are you allowing yourself to be manipulated by other people? Sometimes people have a tendency to project onto you what they would do, how they would handle a certain situation, right? So sometimes, this might show up, manipulation shows up in so many different ways, but here's a couple of examples. It might be, well, I think you should do this, right? And it's almost like a passive aggressiveness, right? I think you should do this, or you should do it this way, or if I were you, I would. It also might be someone who is asking you to do but there's no reciprocity when you ask that person to do. But they can manipulate you into saying, well, if you do this for me, then I can do this for you, like a quid pro quo. Try to say that 10 times fast and say it fast. That's not going to work out, especially if you just heard the way it came out for me the first time. So if you do this for me, then I'll do this for you. But the doing this for you doesn't happen. So it's kind of like manipulating you with this sugary language and maybe even promising you things or giving you things to make you feel like, oh, I can depend. But on the back end of that, it does not happen. Are you allowing yourself to be manipulated by or taken advantage of by other people? That's another way that you can look at this particular question. Here's another question. Are you in toxic relationships? These are all questions to ask yourself when you're like, okay, the topic is, am I sabotaging myself? Well, here's some ways that you can figure that out. Are you in toxic relationships? Now, toxic relationships can also look so many different ways. And that's why I said at the beginning of this conversation, there's so many different layers. There's so much to unpack in each of these. But I just wanted to give them to you because I thought, we think about sabotage. We sometimes think about, and even with the question around toxic relationships, we sometimes think about the really big things like sabotage, like, oh my gosh, something blew up or something derailed, but it can be the smallest things that we are practicing every single day that become saboteurs to us living our best lives, us creating our best version of us, reaching levels of success, achieving goals. That's what this whole conversation about igniting your true self is all about. So are you in toxic relationships? Toxic relationships can range from someone having a conversation with you and putting you down, or using passive aggressive behavior, like trying to intimidate you in such a way like, well, if I were you, I would do it this way, or, you really should, or, if you don't do it that way, then something might happen. All that's the passive aggressiveness, right? To kind of make you feel some kind of way about a situation, a person, or whatever the case may be. So it can be something as simple as that. And then it can also go to something even more severe, physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, those kinds of things. Now, I'm not going to even go any further than that, but I just wanted to kind of show you the range of what toxic relationships might look like. A toxic relationship might also be, someone who is expecting you to be there for them constantly. When they call you, when they text you, I need to talk to you. I need you to listen to me. Oh my gosh, can you believe? And then the moment that you try to go back and ask for that same kind of support, they're not available. And when they're pouring onto you, you're feeling this kind of energy that's messing with you physically, like you're getting stressed about it, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's toxic. So you see how that the toxicity can show up in so many different ways. Another toxic example is, and I think I might have mentioned this before, but let's say you're having a conversation with someone and their conversation is constantly negative. It's like, oh my gosh, every other word is something that's going wrong. Somebody did something. Somebody did this. Somebody said that. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. And before you know it, you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm tired. I'm exhausted. That's toxic. It can become toxic. So are you in toxic relationships? Let me take it to a professional setting. I have had experience over the years where managers have made employees feel like they have to walk on eggshells. Now, this might be in a professional space, or in a personal space. I have had conversations with people who have experienced being in a room with a leader who is talking down to them, who is yelling at the top of their lungs, slamming things on desks and tables and things of that nature. That's toxic. So are you in toxic relationships, personally or professionally? And again, as I said at the beginning, evaluate where you are right now and determine how these questions show up for you. No is a complete sentence. Absolutely. Thank you for reiterating that, because it absolutely is. And sometimes I just want to go there for a minute. So thank you for putting that in the chat. Sometimes we feel like we got to explain things. Well, I can't just say no. I've got to explain, or I've got to, try to get somebody's permission because I'm saying no. You don't. Sometimes it's just no. No, I'm not. And just leave it at that. Okay. So let me move on. So the next question to ask yourself when you think about, am I sabotaging myself? Come on, cursor, move along. Are you settling for less than you desire or you deserve? I just want to let it sit right there. Are you settling for less than you desire or you deserve? And again, everything that I'm mentioning, not just in this show, but across the board, you get to decide whether this fits personally or professionally. Okay. So let's take a couple different angles on this one. So let me go to the professional side first. So professionally, you might say, am I settling for less than I desire or I deserve? That's for the person who is sitting in a space and you're like, I feel like I'm just occupying space right now. There's nothing in this space that I feel excited about. There's nothing in what I get up every single day to do, day after day, hour after hour, that I'm excited about. To the point where I'm dredging. Is that a word? I'm dragging when I go to work every day. I got to a point, this was years ago, and I talk about this in my first book, Pathway to Purpose, which is available on Amazon, about this idea of stagnation. When you get to a point where you say, I'm showing up, I'm sitting at this desk, I'm turning on my computer, and there's just something that's not resonating. Are you settling for less than you desire or deserve? Let me go to the personal side. And I'm speaking about this more so in relationships, which the previous question was, are you in a toxic relationship? So let's say it's not necessarily toxic, but it's not fulfilling. So are you settling for less than you deserve? Are you settling for less than you desire? So sometimes when those of us who are single and we're out into this new world of dating, Lord have mercy. That's a whole nother conversation. In fact, there's a whole topic in the new book that's coming out. I'll talk about that later. But sometimes we get to the point where we say, either you haven't been connected with someone in a really long time, or you really, like, I know I want companionship. And sometimes it is because of that space that we decide, well, I'm just going to settle for any old thing. And I'm here to tell you, that's probably not what you want to do, right? So the question is, are you settling for less than you desire or you deserve? Now, there's a whole process that I'm going to be talking about on, well, how do you even get to the point of making sure that you don't fall into this trap? And I'm not going to give away too much of it right now, because you'll hear more about that in the book. But here's a question. Are you sabotaging yourself? One of the ways that you sabotage yourself is when you settle for less than what you desire or you deserve. Because what ends up happening is when you settle, and I'm going to move on in just a moment, but when you end up settling, guess what happens? You can become miserable. You can become unhappy. You can become dissatisfied. You can become isolated. There's so many things that happen when you settle. So the question is that what you're doing right now? And then you look up years later and you say, well, because I settled and I didn't step out into what I desire, into what I deserve, then now I'm just complacent. So let me move on. Told you it's a whole lot in this conversation. Here's another question. Ooh. Now, I'm going to say this again. This is one of the things. Are you ignoring the practice of self-care? Are you ignoring the practice of self-care? The question, the topic is, are you sabotaging yourself? So let's talk about this thing. You might say, well, how does that fit into me sabotaging myself? Guess what? If you ignore yourself time after time after time, and if the other question, are you having trouble saying no? See, these two can go hand in hand. Then what ends up happening, you begin to sabotage your own mental, physical, spiritual well-being, your health, your wellness. So when I say, are you ignoring the practice of self-care? It is depriving yourself of something that is absolutely necessary. It's almost like the fact that we need air and we need water. To do what? Somebody type it in the chat. Why do we need air and water? Let me just pause for a minute and let you answer that question. Type it in the chat. Why do we need air and water? I'm going to check the comments and see. Why do we need air and water? Okay, I'm going to go back. Somebody said, I'm selling personally and professionally. Okay. So I'm going to talk about that. So I'm not just going to tell you what to think about in order to determine whether you're sabotaging yourself. I'm going to tell you how you can move beyond it. That's it. That's the answer. Somebody typed it in the chat. We need self-care like we need air and water. The answer was to live. Yep. To not just survive, but to thrive. Now, one could argue that we need air and water. The air that we have right now in some parts of the country is not air that we necessarily want to or should be breathing right now outside without a mask, okay? And let me stop and just say this really quickly. I meant to say this in the opening, but I'm going to say it right here. COVID taught us a lot. COVID required us to wear masks, okay? And I know there was a whole conversation about that, but I'm going to bring it to the present moment. We are back in a space where there is some concern about what's happening around us. And there may be a need. I'm going to say this. I feel the need to now wear a mask until we get some better air quality readings in my neck of the woods. So I'm going to say this to you. I'm going to pray that we can all make good decisions, right? That we can be healthy and that our air quality gets back to a point where it is safe to go outside and do the things that we need and want to do without having to wear a mask again. But in the meantime, I'm asking for us to be mindful of making good decisions. I'm also going to say this, and I know this is not part of my topic anywhere on my notes and my script, anywhere, but I'm just going to say it because we get so complacent and we get so used to all the things, right? The air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, the places we go, all of the things. And we just don't stop to realize that what we've been blessed with is what we also need to take care of so that we don't get into situations where we have to be told to wear a mask because we've been negligent about the blessings that have been given to us. So I just wanted to leave that right there. And let's all just trust and believe and pray that we get to a better place, not just with the air quality, but with everything that we're dealing with. Okay, so now let me get back. Okay, so are you ignoring the practice of self-care? That's the last question I wanted you to consider as you consider the original question, which is the topic for tonight. Are you sabotaging yourself? So let me just share a couple things. So if you answered yes to any of those questions, then I'm going to just offer up a few simple things really, really quickly about how you can begin to shift the narrative. So are you sabotaging yourself? The question is yes. If you're watching this and you could identify, it doesn't matter whether you say, well, all 7 don't apply. So no, if you answer yes to any one of those 7 questions, then that means, yes, you are sabotaging yourself. And before I share these 3 tips with you, let me just say really quickly, well, what's the impact of that? Like, if you are harming or hindering some progress that you could be making personally or professionally, someone typed it in the chat to say, yes, personally and professionally, that's what I'm dealing with. Think about it from this perspective. The more I sabotage myself, the more I put myself down, have toxic thoughts, have trouble saying no, allowing myself to be manipulated, in toxic relationships, settling for less than I deserve, ignoring my self-care, the more I do that, the more I'm hindering myself from really embracing the best that is available to me. The more I am potentially putting myself in harm's way, mentally, physically, spiritually. The more I'm weighing myself down, I'm tiring myself out, I'm exhausted beyond measure, I'm taking on everybody else's responsibility, I'm saying no to myself and yes to everybody else, but yet I expect that I'm going to be healthy, be able to sleep at night, be able to have the stamina and the energy and the clarity that I need to move forward into whatever it is that I'm called to do. See, that's what's happening. All of that is being stifled because you keep telling yourself, I'm not good enough. You keep telling yourself, I'm not pretty enough. You keep telling yourself, I don't have enough. You keep telling yourself, this will never be for me. You keep allowing people to walk over top of you, say any old kind of thing to you, talk to you any kind of way, and think that your feelings aren't supposed to be hurt, right? That's what's happening. And do you know that the more that that's piled on, the more that we are weighed down, which means when we are weighed down, what happens? When we're weighed down, what happens? I'm going to ask somebody to type it in the chat. When we get weighed down, tell me what happens. What happens when we get weighed down? I'm gonna go back to a comment in the chat and then I'm gonna come back to see if someone puts the answer in. Considering the question of self-care, I don't know if I know what that really is. This doesn't come naturally even into my thoughts. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So thank you for the response to the question. So the question was, what happens when we get weighed down? When we get weighed down, the response is we drown. We suffocate. The image that came to mind just a few moments ago, thank you for posting the response to that question. Do you all remember in The Wizard of Oz when the house came pummeling down on the Wicked Witch? And you could see the house sitting on top of her, and all you could see was her little feet underneath of the house. She was done. So when I think about what happens when we get weighed down, we drown, we suffocate, we die, literally or figuratively, because of stress, because of somebody else's stuff, we can go into places of depression, anxiety, frustration, all of that. So I don't want to just talk about this word sabotage in a light, fluffy kind of way. I really want us to recognize the impact of what this thing can do to us. I'm going to go back to the definition from the very beginning before I go into these 3 tips. And I'm going to go back to your comment about not even really recognizing what self-care is. I'm glad you said that. I'm also glad you said it because it shows the realness of what so many of us are challenged with when it comes to that. Okay, so I'm gonna put that over here for just a moment. But remember the definition. It is an act or process tending to hamper or hurt on various levels in varying degrees. Okay, so I tried to group these tips into what addresses the 7 questions that I asked earlier. So I'm going to try to give it to you this way, and hopefully it comes across as I have it written in my script, and I'm just going to let it go however it needs to go to hopefully make sure that you get it. So here's the first tip. So remember the two questions that I asked after the topic or are you putting yourself down, and are you thinking toxic thoughts? Okay. So when I think about those two questions, if you answered yes to those two questions, here is what I'm going to suggest is to understand and acknowledge your value. Let me just say that again. Understand and acknowledge your value. Your value, your value. See, sometimes when we start having these conversations, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did that. I'm so dumb. She's so pretty. I'm so ugly. Blah, 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 blah. When we do that, it's because we're looking externally at all the stuff and all the people around us. And we're like, oh, but I don't measure up. Or we're looking at our experience. We're looking at how we grew up and what somebody told us and what somebody said to us or what they didn't say to us. We're looking at all those things because that's really what makes us up. Our history, our experience, our culture, our family, all the things. And so when you stop and say, wait a minute, the thing that's sabotaging me is what I'm thinking about myself. The thing that's sabotaging me is what I'm saying about myself because I'm comparing myself to other people. But I need to stop and understand and acknowledge that I'm valuable. That, you know what? I might not have the same kind of education as somebody else had. I might not even have the same kind of experience. I don't work at the same kind of place. I don't drive the same kind of thing. I don't live in the same. I might not. But the mere fact that I am here existing and breathing and operating and moving means that I'm valuable. And whoa. Let me take it back. The fact that I was created, period. I was created in my mother's womb. In that moment, there was something special and unique about me. If you recall, if you heard the show from a few weeks ago, I talked about this thing called a fingerprint. I talked about this thing called a blueprint, which simply means that there's something unique about you and you and you and you all over there and me right here. So when I stop to sabotage myself with what I'm thinking about how I'm not this and how I'm not that and how I don't have this and I don't have that and I haven't been here and I haven't been there. When I start doing that, wait a minute. Let me just say, hold up, wait, that might be true, but I'm valuable. There is something, there's something I heard earlier today. The conversation was between Shannon Sharp, ex-NFL player. Now he's a radio host with Cowherd, I think it is. He was interviewing Tabitha Brown. I love Tabitha Brown. She's the reason why I started even thinking about eating a plant-based diet, primarily plant-based diet. And she said something, and when she said it, and I thought about this tip, and I was like, oh my gosh, how true is that? The conversation was on, when she's entertaining deals and partnerships and all that kind of stuff. What is that experience like? And has she had moments where she's gone into rooms and people have offered her something that she knows is an insult, pretty much is how I took the part of the conversation. The comment that she made was that I could walk into a room and there's no amount of money that I could be offered that would meet my value. She said, because I'm a prize. I am valuable. Now, she wasn't saying it in an arrogant way. It wasn't narcissistic. It was this confidence that was a reminder that we all have something. And what she said is, I know that no one will ever be able to match my value, but they will be able to match what I'm willing to accept. Did you hear that? So I want you to think about that and go to this tip and understand and acknowledge that very same fact that you are valuable. So when you start putting yourself down, when you start saying these things about yourself, just stop and say, whoa, wait a minute. I'm valuable. So as opposed to I'm so stupid, it's like, you know what? I'm smart. I'm smart with what I know. I'm smart with what I've been given. I'm smart with what I have acknowledged and learned over the course of my life. I'm smart. I might not be as smart as somebody else, but I'm smart for who I am, right? That's tip number one. Okay. Let me go to the comments. I don't want to miss anything. Oh, I wasn't ready for where you're taking me today. Okay, that's a good thing. I hope you're ready now. More importantly, I hope you're going to stay ready after this is over. All right. So thank you for putting that out there. I appreciate you. I do. So here's the second tip. And again, I tried to align it with the question. So remember when I asked the question, are you having trouble saying no? Are you allowing yourself to be manipulated by other people? Are you in toxic relationships? So let's kind of group those three questions together. And I'm going to give you this tip to address those three. This tip says to create boundaries. Oop, there's 2 periods right there. Create boundaries. Maybe that's intentional. These days is like period. So this is a period, double period. Create boundaries. Now, I know sometimes it's not easy to create boundaries because we're so used to, I'm going to go back to this not saying no. You might be the person who always feels like when they come to me, when it's wrong, when it has to be fixed, when it has to be analyzed, when somebody needs a thought, somebody needs an idea, they gonna come to me. And because I just want to show up and I just want to please everybody. And I'm always say yes. I'm gonna say create boundaries to begin to say no. And I know, I realize that it's just not as easy for some of us to do that. Because let's face it, we want to be liked, we want to be loved, we want people to feel like they can always count on us. But I'm going to say, you might not always be able to count on me. You might have to call somebody else. Somebody else might have to go. Somebody else might have to show up. And it does not mean that you don't care, that you're not trying to know, that you're not trying to be engaged. It doesn't mean that. It just means that in order to protect my energy, in order to protect my space, in order to protect my sanity, in order to protect my body, in order to protect my thoughts, going back to what are you telling yourself? I got to say no. If I pick up the phone and I'm listening to you, and it's always something that makes me feel drained or always something that makes me say, damn, why did I even pick up the phone? That boundary might be when you see that number coming in or you see that text message, you just have to ignore it. That's creating a boundary. That's a no. That is a no, not right now. I cannot entertain this right now. I cannot have this conversation with you because I need to preserve my capacity to just be in a place of peace. Do you understand what that means? Creating boundaries in toxic relationships. And remember when I said toxic has a range, okay? Sometimes we just have to say, I've gotten to a place where this no longer serves me. I've gotten to a place where I care more about myself than allowing me to be talked to any kind of way, manipulated by you. Remember when I asked that question? Like all the things, boundaries. Sometimes you're the go-to person on your job. You might be the person where it's like, oh, give it to her, give it to him. He can handle it. He knows it. Oh my gosh, she's done this for years. And then before you know it, you got 25 things on your list. Boundaries. And I know you might feel like, well, I can't create a boundary because that's my job and I can't say no to my manager. Let me just tell you, there's a shifting that needs to happen. And this is a conversation that's going to go far beyond this conversation tonight. But we have to advocate for ourselves in every space that we're in. Because sometimes if we don't do it, if we expect other people to do it for us, it might not happen. Creating boundaries. There's a whole lot more I can say about that, but I know time is moving and I want to make sure we wrap up and I can get you on to the rest of your evening. So the last question, when I said, are you sabotaging yourself? Again, topic for tonight. There's some little piece of material or something on my lip. The last question was, are you settling? Oh, wait, no, did I do that one? Oh, yeah, that was one. Are you settling for less than you desire or deserve? Actually, I have 4 tips tonight, not 3. That's why I threw myself off. If you answered yes to that question, are you settling for less than you desire or deserve? Here is tip number 3. Is to connect with things or people, I didn't put that in here, but or people that are purposeful and meaningful. Connect with things and or people that are purposeful and meaningful. Now, this might take a little time and nurturing and building and all of that. But what does it mean to just stay in a place where we're just settling? Because it's the way it's always been. It ain't gonna get no better than this. Is that really true? It is true if you make it true. So when you connect with things and people that are purposeful and meaningful, that means that you are having new conversations with people who, instead of draining you with their conversation, they're pouring into you. And it's like, oh my gosh, I feel alive. I feel like, oh, this is a breath of fresh air. When you connect to things and people that are purposeful and meaningful, there is something or someone that is lifting you up, that is encouraging you to move beyond some of those sabotaging thoughts and words. To connect with things and people that are purposeful and meaningful means that you are beginning to seek out the things that you really, what do I really enjoy doing? What is it that I'm good at? What is it that people are coming to me for? That while I have to create those boundaries so that I'm not totally drained afterward, but it's allowing me to think about, well, wait a minute, I'm really good at this. This really makes me feel like I'm serving a greater purpose, that there is a higher gift in me that is left to be untapped. That's what this tip is about. Connecting with things and people that are purposeful and meaningful, that gives you some new insight, some of that maybe you never even considered about yourself. And you say, oh. And now tip number 4, my final tip for tonight, and then we're going to wrap up. Remember the question I said, are you ignoring the practice of self-care? Which I'm going to come back to the comment that was placed in the chat a little while ago. My simple tip is this: make a daily self-care a priority. Are you sabotaging yourself? Are you draining yourself? Are you working yourself to exhaustion? Are you putting yourself on the back burner? Are you making excuses? Are you asking for permission from someone? Can I take care of myself? Can I go do this? Are you holding on to old ways of thinking about self-care? Are you sabotaging yourself? So if you are, and it becomes a struggle as to what to do, like what even is this? So let me go back to the question or the comment in the chat. I don't even know what that is. Self-care is exactly what the word says. It is taking care of you. It is taking care of self. The fact that we don't know what it is because we're so used to external care. We're used to other care, taking care of everybody else. Your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your husband, your wife, your children, your job, your neighbors, your friends, your church, taking care of all of that. So the question is, as much as you give it out, and I'm going to talk about this all the time. This is always going to be a conversation because I truly do believe that in order for us to get to a level of transformation, in order for you to get to a next, in order for you to get to a best version, in order for you to get to your true self, in order for you to get to your true synergy, in order for you to achieve your goals, in order for you to go to the next, whatever that looks like for you, you have to take care of yourself. You can't do anything outside of, okay, I want to reach this goal. I want to do this. You can't do that if you weighed down. You can't do that if you're always running for somebody else. And then you look up and you say, well, dang, it's time to go to bed and then start the rat race all over. You cannot. So making daily self-care a priority, taking care of you, owning the fact that you deserve and you should be unapologetic about taking a minute for yourself. Whether that's exercise, whether it's eating right, whether it's drinking your water, whether it's having healthy conversations, whether it's therapy, whether it's sitting quiet, whether it's meditation, whether it's breath work, whether it's yoga, you don't have to ask anybody's permission. And I know you might be saying, but yeah, I do. No, you don't. What you do is you say, you know what, this is what I'm getting ready to do. I'm letting you know. I'm serving you notice that this is what I'm going to do. I'm not asking you, can I, should I? No. Now, you might have to make some arrangements with your children or whatever, but there's no asking for permission. Making daily self-care a priority is a way to eliminate the sabotage of destroying your body, your mind, and your spirit with everyday stuff. So you're trying to work out stuff on your job. You're listening to the news. You're trying to work out stuff in your family, with your friends, with your spouse, with your children. You're trying to do all of that. And because of that, it is absolutely necessary to tap into this tip number 4. So let me go back to the comment. Yep. Having this conversation with you several years ago changed my life. Absolutely. You know, that's a blessing. And I appreciate you saying that. I wasn't, okay, I read that one already. Okay, so let me go back because I want to, so considering the question of self-care, since this is where we are, then we're going to wrap up. I know I'm keeping y'all, but I'm not going to apologize for tonight because I think this conversation is important. Considering the question of self-care, I don't know if I know what that really is. This doesn't come naturally, even into my thoughts. So there's a few reasons why it doesn't come naturally. And it's not just you. It is for a lot of people. It is true for me. And this is the reason why I know why this shift needs to be made. And I've talked about this a lot. There's a whole chapter in the book coming up. I'm Here Now What? I'm Finding Joy After the Storm. I'll talk about that in a minute. But there's a whole chapter that I've devoted to self-care. There are some very specific reasons as to why it doesn't come naturally. And I'm just going to give you one. It doesn't come naturally because if you're like me, maybe that's not what you were taught. I don't recall a conversation, and this is not to say anything negative about my family, my upbringing. It just wasn't something that we talked about. It wasn't something my mom shared with me, probably because her mom didn't share with her, probably because her mom didn't share with her. You see how that works? So it doesn't come, the things that come naturally sometimes are taught to us, and then we pick it up and it becomes a natural part of who we are. But if it's not something that we've ever been taught, we've never learned it, we've never been told how important it is, we haven't been told how to practice. Like if it was never a part of our upbringing or the psyche that was implanted, then of course it doesn't come naturally. But this is why being here in this space is so very important, because we do have the opportunity to shift and change and move into something different so that it does come naturally. Now, there has to be some undoing and some adjusting and some reprogramming of what we've been told, what we've been taught, and how we've been practicing. But trust and believe that it is absolutely possible. And beyond that, it's necessary. So I get it. But now I want you to walk away from this conversation. And I want you to say, you know what? Self-care is needed just as much as breathing. Self-care is needed just as much as air and water. It's almost like, and I'm going to wrap this up, but I got to say this. It's almost like, you know how when we're told to drink water and how it feeds our cells and our organs and it flushes things out. Think about self-care. And notice I said daily self-care, because sometimes we're like, oh, it's self-care Saturday, it's self-care Sunday. And while that's true, and I absolutely love my self-care Sunday regimen, but I mean every single day. I don't just mean 1 or 2 days. I mean every single day. Doing something to nurture yourself, to take care of you. See, that's when we're sabotaging ourselves, it's when we neglect ourselves. When we neglect the things that make us feel good mentally, physically, spiritually. When we just, and then we look up and we wonder, well, damn, I'm tired. I can't even think straight. oh my gosh, if one more person says one more thing to me, you're short with people, that's sabotage. So now think of it this way. Not only does that mean you might be sabotaging yourself, but you might be sabotaging other people around you because you're not taking care of yourself. Okay. All right. So I could probably stay on this for like the rest of the night, but I know we're winding down. Right. So I'm going to say these couple things to you. I'm not even going to go back and recap because there's a lot of stuff that I covered. I'm just going to ask you if you need a recap, you need to go back and listen and pull out some more stuff, be reflective of what I've shared with you tonight. Just go back to the video. Okay. Go back to the video, go back to the replay, and just kind of marinate. Let the stuff look, chew on it a little bit more, let it marinate, and just figure out where it sits for you. And more importantly, what to do going forward. And here's what I'm going to share. There's a couple of things that you can do. Number one, I realize that you may have heard me tonight. May have heard me talking about boundaries. You may have heard me talking about, not allowing yourself to be manipulated, the art of saying no, like all of those things. And you might even be saying to yourself, I know, I heard it, but I need to know like some more. I need to like put myself and say, this is me. So how do I put these things into place? You still might be having questions about that. If you do, I'm going to encourage you, go to my website, truesynergy.org. Let's set up. This does not cost you anything but 45 minutes of your time. If you're saying, I'm trying to process it, I'm trying to put it all together, I still have some questions, 45-minute discovery session where you and I get to sit down and say, okay, this is what's happening. And we can talk about some things that can move you out of the space that you're in right now. TrueSynergy.org, there's an opportunity to go to the contact at the top, fill it out, and then I get notification, and then we schedule some time. It is just that simple. Now, I'm going to go back to self-care because coming up on June the 20th, Tuesday, June the 20th, and Saturday, June the 24th, I am offering, there's 2 new sessions. If you missed the first 2 sessions that I did a couple weeks ago, there's 2 new sessions, breathwork and meditation. These are probably some of the simplest, easiest, and I'm going to say the sweetest practices because it's just something just sweet about the opportunity to meditate, to sit, to be still, to take in some air inside, and to understand how all of that operates in our bodies and helps us to settle ourselves down. That's a form of self-care. So if you missed the first 2 sessions, 2 new sessions are being offered. That is Tuesday, June the 20th, 7 to 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then Saturday, June the 24th, 9:30 a.m. to 10:15 a.m. Registration is required and each session is $15. So when you think about self-care, and if up to this point, I don't understand what that is, I haven't been practicing, I don't even know how, I don't even know what, I don't even know where, then I'm giving it to you right here. So registration is required. And then again, $15 each session. I will be posting again the links for registration and the dates that you can choose. I posted, I think it went out, what's today? Thursday, maybe Monday or Tuesday. So if you go back through my feed on Facebook or Instagram, you'll see that and you can go ahead and register for that. But I will be reposting that as well. And then the last thing I will say is that I do encourage you to stay connected with me because, as I mentioned through this conversation, that book number 2 is coming out this fall. I'm here now. What? Finding Joy After the Storm. Right now, pre-order sales are scheduled to begin July the 8th. That is my actual birthday. This is a special year and special month because of the pre-order sales and the launch of the book. And then the official launch is September the 16th. So I do encourage you to stay connected with me on all of my social media platforms. You can find those on my website. You can also go to my Linktree because all of my social media platforms are listed there, and we'll be doing announcements about new things coming out, contests, giveaways, Q&A, like all the things leading up to pre-order and the official launch. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Ericka Sallee, and on Instagram at True Synergy _. So you want to stay connected so that you are in the know about all the book related stuff and anything else related to True Synergy. And then finally, if you are watching this on YouTube, I do encourage you to subscribe to the channel, share it out, and then turn the notification bell on, because when new videos are uploaded, then you will be in the know. All right, so I know that I've kept you for an entire hour tonight. I had no clue about when it was going to end, but I wanted to make sure that I gave you the information that I thought would be relevant for you to go ahead and continue to focus on your true self, like the essence of who you were created to be. So with that being said, I'm going to invite you to join me back on next week for another episode. I did not put the topic for next week in the show tonight, because I kind of want to do the same thing. I want to put a few options out there and let some folks choose, and then we go from there. So on that note, I hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a good, safe weekend. Be safe. Take care of yourselves. And until I see you again, I want you to, in fact, be well. All right. Good night.